Our next presenter is from Creo. He is Raymond Nomizu. He is the founder and co-CEO. Raymond's going to discuss how sponsors can leverage the electronic source trend among sites through the use of central eSource. Learn how the solution accelerates site startup, standardizes data quality at the point of capture, accelerates time to EDC entry, and enables true centralized remote monitoring. Welcome, Raymond.
Thank you very much. Quick introduction on Creo for those of you not familiar with our company. We were started in 2016, so we've been in business for almost 10 years now. And we are the industry's leading eSource platform. And our eSource is essentially a highly customizable, configurable data collection system that can be configured to the protocol in question. It's utilized by over 2,000 sites. Mostly, a lot of them are in the United States, but we do have a presence, an increasing presence internationally. We're now in 27 countries. And our eSource system can be licensed directly to research sites, deployed across all of their studies. And then we have a number of other site software solutions that allow sites to operate their entire operations holistically. The critical aspect of our eSource is that it's highly interoperable. We have built integrations with patient recruitment firms. We have a number of central lead vendors that can send patient leads directly into the system to eliminate any need for the sites to re-enter the data. And we do have integrations that we have built and are building out with EDC systems, central lab systems, and other vendors. And we do plan to have EHR integration down the road. So what I want to emphasize is that our eSource system is already embedded in a significant number of research sites on a daily basis, and therefore gives us an opportunity to bring some of the efficiencies directly to the sponsor. I want to talk about a very basic question. What is site source? And I want everyone to think about site source as sort of a bridge between the protocol and the EDC. So you have the protocol, right, which is basically the instruction kit for how to do the research. And the site then takes that protocol and is charged with the responsibility for collecting data. They have to know what data to collect, when to collect it, how to collect it. And importantly, there's a lot of instructions and directions inside the protocol that are going to be a little bit different from study to study, and it could be different from typical standard of care delivery mechanisms. So the site source ends up being a workflow sheet for the sites to be able to collect data methodically and per the protocol. And in the process of collecting the site source data, the site's going to be collecting the data that will be entered into the EDC. So what you have, if you think about the site source, is basically a bridge. It takes a protocol, it operationalizes it at the site level, and then in the process, it's capturing the EDC data. Some of the site source is done in the EMR, depending on the institution. AMCs, oncology centers tend to be EMR-centric. A lot of research sites, even those that are community practices, physician practices, aren't using the EMR because the EMR is not really well built for interventional trials, and many of them are using paper source. And even the academic centers and oncology centers are using a combination or hybrid. It's not unusual for them to have flow sheets that are done on paper combined with some data entry into the EMR. But either way, all sites are going to have some kind of a system, some kind of a process to figure out how to collect the data in a manner that's compliant with the protocol. And that's what eSource does, is eSource makes this electronic. It empowers the sites to design the source configured to the study protocol that they're working on. And right now, I would characterize the model for this industry as site source essentially being local. So the title is local eSource. It should have been written local source, right? So let's forget about whether the source is on paper or electronic or EMR or whatever. Source is the site's responsibility. That's generally how this industry has evolved to. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a pictorial representation that basically says the sponsor is giving the sites the protocol, giving the sites the login to the EDC. The sites take those, and then every single site on the study will be responsible for designing their own source templates, right? The workflow sheets, the flow sheets, the paper charts, in some cases, the EMR template. For those sites that are licensing directly from Creo, it's the Creo eSource template that they're designing. Now, what you have are some of the challenges over there on the right-hand side, right? There are some sites that are going to be using eSource, and they will be higher quality. but most of the sites will not be. They will not necessarily be using edit checks and take advantage of technology at the point of capture. So what you have is you have a lot of different sites using different methodologies. They're using different templates. Even the sites that are on eSource are writing their eSource templates differently. There's variable quality in them, variable timelines for them to complete. There's still a lot of paper. Many sites are still using entirely paper source charts. No EMR, no resource, just all in on paper. All of the data is being captured in the source and then manually entered into the EDC. And because of the highly opaque nature of the source, a lot of the monitoring has to be on site out of necessity for source data verification, source data review. That is the current state of the industry. We have an offering that's called Central eSource, right? Okay, so we're not here to necessarily be the EDC on a system. We are here to provide a foundation for the sites on the trial to provide consistency and standardization across a large number of sites. And in the process of doing that, we're going to make the EDC data higher quality and faster time to entry. So in the Central eSource model, what we can do is we can take the protocol, we can design a centralized source template. And in the process of designing source template, we can also pre-identify what variables map to the EDC system, and we can pre-map the template to the EDC. This centralized source template can be provided to the sites on the trial, and our system is built in such a way that sites can add on top of it. So there is the ability for sites to locally configure on top so that sites can put in their specific workflow SOPs that might be institution specific. And that allows the sponsor to have sort of centralized data quality, but also have local customization for the sites. The advantages of this model is that you have a single standardized source template. You have site level configurability. The majority of the sites can now be persuaded or given an opportunity to go electronic. And many sites have not gone electronic because they're busy, because they're small, because of the change management, because it costs money. But if this is something offered by the sponsor and it's a site system that they're familiar with brand-wise or was built for sites, a lot of sites will elect to utilize electronic source for that study. So you can get the majority of the sites using an eSource system. The source data is now pre-mapped to the EDC, and the integration has been validated. So now all the sites have the ability to send the data into the EDC, which now means the EDC is being populated much faster. And now in this model, we can now have much more remote monitoring, more centralized monitoring, more risk-based monitoring. It's a significant win. Now you might be saying, okay, well, how do we do this at scale, right? We know the challenges, right? And EHR DEC is a great thing. One of the challenges is that every EHR is a local institution's EHR system, and there has to be a lot of local implementations. And it's often hard to get that done at scale across the entire trial. The advantage of a centralized eSource system is that we can create that central template and send it to the sites at scale, and all the sites can then be on the same platform. And so there's one integration built one time, and everybody leverages that integration. So if we had this model, what kind of adoption can we see on a trial? Because that's really going to determine the ROI for the sponsor. And I want to share a case study recently. I'm going to skip through some slides here on a global phase 3 trial that we are supporting for a large pharma company. It's a CNS trial. And this study has been deployed to over 200 sites in 6 different countries with 3 different languages. And by the way, our source can be converted to different language templates, right? On this particular study, 150 sites elected to utilize the Creo eSource that was offered to them. That's about a 69% site adoption. That means that 2/3 of the site on the study are receiving and working off a central template using electronic data checks that have already been validated, that ensure that the data is being consistently captured per the protocol, that the data is pre-mapped to the EDC. And within the site, among the sites that elected to utilize Creo eSource, a little under a third have elected to do some type of local configurability or customization, right? Which means that there is definitely a core set of demand among some sites to configure for local operations. A quote over there on the right, and we've done other studies like this. This is the biggest one that we've done, but a quote from over there on the right-hand side from someone in ClinOps is basically saying centralized eSource is the next evolution in clinical trial efficiency, right? It's similar to central IRBs and central labs. Why do we have central IRBs, right? Can you imagine a world where you gave 30 sites the same protocol and every site has to take that protocol and convert it to an informed consent? And some use paper, some use electronic. There's no timelines, there's no transparency. All the sites come on board at different times. There's variable quality in the way the ICF is delivered, right? What's the difference between that and site template? The site template is taking that complex protocol and converting it to a workflow, to a data collection template that is customized to that protocol, right? So both of them involve taking the core document, the protocol, and essentially operationalizing it, interpreting it into a document, right? And I can imagine a world where we want to go back to every site doing things locally for the ICF. My question to the industry is, why do we burden the sites with the burden of developing the source templates locally? So if we had a number of sites that are utilizing Creo eSource on their studies, right, we can now create comparison groups. We can now create a comparison group of sites that have adopted Creo eSource, that's one cohort, and we can compare them to the performance of sites that elected not to opt into the adoption of the Creo eSource template, okay? We also have some other comparison points. We can take the same site, compare their performance before they adopted Creo eSource and after they adopted Creo eSource. So we have the ability, having deployed this for about 20, 30 sponsored studies and literally thousands of research sites over the course of many years. We have a lot of data points, we have a lot of empirical data, and we can construct some of the KPIs, and they're fairly consistent. So what happens? Sites that adopt the Creo eSource system are on average going to enroll more, about 40% more. And you might say, well, what does this have to do with enrollment? And we posit that it has a lot to do with enrollment, because what you're doing is you're freeing up the time for the sites. They don't have to spend about 20 to 30 hours, which is the average amount of time it takes for a staff member at a research site to build their own source template. They don't have that delay in building the source template, asking questions to the CRA, because the process of centralizing the design surfaces all of those questions. They can focus on enrollment at a much faster timeline. And that's why on the next one, Faster Sites Study Startup, you're going to see that the sites that adopt the central source template are about 30 days faster in terms of FPI, first patient screen, first patient randomized, right? So they get off to a faster start and they can sustain that advantage. Data quality goes up. We've done a lot of studies around that. That's indisputable. That's common sense. If you've got the technology at point of capture, you're going to be stopping the protocol deviations before they happen, right? So the edge checks in the EC are great, but they're fired after the fact. What you really want is you want edge checks to fire while the patient is there in real time, while the data is being collected. And with a centralized eSource, we can now facilitate faster EDC entry times because we have that EDC integrations that we'll be offering. But even aside from that, we now have the ability for sites to take advantage of centralized virtual coordinator staff resources. So one of the recommendations we make is that site staff are extremely busy. EDC entry is one of the things that they don't like to do. Queries are some of the things that they don't like to do. But many sites there's a model now where sponsors are willing to supplement site staff with virtual coordinators, right? Well, you can't do virtual EDC entry data resolution if you don't have paper source systems. So one of the advantages of a central eSource system at scale is that now sites can utilize central EDC entry. What stops the site from utilizing overnight data entry services? It's happening now. We have site networks that utilize offshore overnight data entry services, and they're able to get the EDC entry time down to 1 day or less, right? So they finish up in the day, the next morning they come in, it's already been entered. So you get faster time to EDC entry, and then of course monitoring productivity will go up. Monitors don't have to travel as much. They can get more days on site can be done. Monitoring days can increase per month. And even when they look at a site, when you're looking at standardized source template with fewer errors, fewer mistakes, cleaner audit trails, everything's legible, the time to monitor just, is faster. So there's a lot more monitoring productivity. So monitoring costs should come down in the kinds of areas that you want it to come down, right? You want to spend less on travel, you want to spend less on STV, and then you want to invest in site capability, site enablement. You want to invest in technology. You want to invest in the integrations. You want to invest in providing sites with that virtual coordinator service. You want to invest in augmenting the capabilities of essentially your supplier base, your vendors, right? Your sites that are recruiting your patients. So really this is about reallocating resources and doing trials a lot smarter. So in closing, I will then conclude by opening this up to questions. But our central eSource technology is separate from an EDC, but I think in many ways is highly complementary to the EDC. It will facilitate faster EDC entry times, more accurate EDC entry, and just be a completely different way of running a trial. Any cost of the incremental technology should be paid for by savings achieved through moving to a more remote, more centralized, more risk-based monitoring model.
Wow, Raymond, that was, I think you used the word evolutionary, perhaps revolutionary. It feels like a disruptive technology that's welcome. And I think a great presentation on what currently exists and how this can change that. And we have some good questions. So Michael, audience member, so how does this drive higher enrollment?
Yeah, I think it's not a recruitment tool per se, but what it does is it frees up site time. It allows the site to start enrolling faster. I mean, the sites are usually burdened with having developed source template. That alone can add 2 to 4 weeks to a site's startup timeline. So you take that away, they start enrolling faster. When they start utilizing our system, the data is cleaner. There's less rework, right? There's just a lot of time is freed up. And I think what happens is you'll find that the sites now have more time to invest and earlier experience enrolling patients. And so I think they carry that momentum forward. So I don't want to claim, that our system directly impacts recruiting per se, but I think what it does is enhance the site capabilities. And I think the enrollment number is sort of a uber kind of outcome of that, right? Because if you're doing everything right for the site, they ought to deliver, better performance for you.
Okay, another good question. Can you describe one of our audience member concerned about complexity? Can you describe how complex it is to institute CRF translations?
So we have the automation to take say an English language source template, which we assume is the sort of model. I assume there'll be a translation service utilized, so we can extract the data, extract all the text, whether we can then import the templates. So the automation is there as long as the translation service is there, and then different language source templates can be deployed to different countries. Now, in the EDC integration, the good news is we have code lists, right? So what the site will see in their local language, that's the display language, but our system can then have code lists that will then that we can then map directly to the EDC. So the backend database can be mapped accordingly, right? So the only thing that wouldn't map directly might be free text. That might be the only thing that we would be reluctant to integrate.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the sourcing journey that our audience takes. So buyers are, going through this complex journey. They're trying to assemble all the right technology. We sometimes simplify it when we talk about a piece of technology, but there's a lot of technology bringing to bear in a clinical trial. What part of that process would you like them to come to you? Is it, they have an EDC already on board? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think definitely we want to be part of the entire study. During the vendor selection process, we want to be involved early. And ideally, there would be an understanding that this technology would be offered, because one of the things that you can do is if you know that this is going to be offered and adopted by some critical mass, and you could probably underwrite 50% to be conservative, that you can have remote monitoring, right? So you can have a different type of monitoring plan. If you've already written the monitoring plan as if it's business as usual, then you buy our technology, we create these efficiencies. Well, we just increase somebody's profit margin. We didn't necessarily deliver value to the sponsor directly. So very much we want to be part of the conversation as you embark on the trial, right? Think of this as something that you want to really incorporate at the beginning, because then you can sort of design around it. And just think as a sponsor, you know, the insight that you get, the value of the transparency, being able to log in and see the data. So it is a mind shift change, but it's, I think, a technology that, you know, we think will have heavy adoption in the coming years because of the potential it offers.
Fascinating. This is really a fascinating technology. So, Raymond, thank you very much for being with us today. We've been speaking with Raymond Nomizu. He is the founder and co-CEO at Creo. Thank you very much.
Thank you.